Good evening. It is 6:30. Members of council are assembled when you're ready to begin.
All right, thank you, Don. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores for Monday, January the 27th, 2025, and say hello to all committee members, all council members virtually this evening, and everyone watching us via the live stream. We're glad everybody's with us. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and I'll read that this evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interests. Any member have one of those they'd like to declare at this time? Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments, so we're on to adoption of the minutes, and we have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 6 and January 13, 2025 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments to that set of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Luke,
Oh, sorry, the Deputy Mayor.
hard to keep the hand up and whatever. I just wanted to ask, the January 13th minutes related to the discussion surrounding the Cultural Heritage Master Plan. I know that the minutes aren't verbatim, but there was significant conversation and comment, I believe, about concern for including language that enabled someone other than the property owner to submit, for designation, or a non-supportive property owner. Just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that council did express some concerns about a private property owner being impacted when they weren't supporting the path forward or the process. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd ask the clerk, is it possible to have that sentiment reflected in the minutes?
Certainly, that can be reflected in the minutes.
Okay, is there any objection to an amendment along those lines? No, I think that was clearly part of the discussion, so it can be added. If there's nothing further, then I'll go to the, I'll pose the question now as amended. If there's nothing further, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so now we are going all the way down to reports, item 9, reports of municipal officers and committees. And the first one is 9.1, which is property tax assessment errors response. And that's going to be presented to us by the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is in follow-up to the Don Andrews presentation from the last council meeting. A palpable error was made by Impact that had resulted in the Andrews overpaying taxes. The Andrews have already received a recovery for 2022 through 2024, as correction of this error is permitted by the Municipal Act. The Andrews are seeking a recovery of $615 for 2020 through 2021. Staff are not able to process a payment through the tax system for those years, as legislation only allows for corrections in the prior 2 years. However, residents can apply to the ARB to seek relief, and if approved, the town would issue a refund. There's no cost for such an application, but there are other factors such as time, effort, and frustration that can impact how a resident reacts to the process. Although the town cannot issue a refund through the tax system beyond the 2-year window without an ARB ruling, council could consider authorizing a payment through the town's account payable system. Such a payment, being that it's outside of the tax system, would mean that recovery of the county and education portions of the tax payment could not be recovered. Needless to say, if council were to set aside the frustration experienced by residents by having to go to the ARB to receive a refund, the ARB process would be the best process to follow. But I'm sure that council is concerned about the residents' frustration in having to deal with the ARB for such a small amount. In this case, close to $600. With that in mind, the recommendation before you, as a starting point for council deliberation, is to direct staff to issue reimbursements for impact palpable errors that are less than $1,000. As council deliberates, council may decide that they have a higher tolerance for covering the county and education portions, and council may choose to revise the proposed $1,000 threshold upwards. Conversely, if council's tolerance is lower than that, council may choose not to approve this recommendation, in which case the resident would be advised to make an application through the ARB. The recommendation is before you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution, and that is that council directs staff to issue reimbursements for impact palpable errors that are more than 2 years prior to a resident's Section 358 application for applications that would be less than $1,000. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Davinsky. Is there any desire for discussion on this? Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I want to say thank you to town staff. When we were discussing this a few weeks ago, I asked that it be fast-tracked and show up at this meeting, which it has. So my thanks to town staff who helped bring this to fruition. I am still in favor of this particular notice, this motion rather, and I will be voting in favor. I think it's the right thing to do, and I will vote in favor of this motion.
Excellent, thank you. Are there further comments at this time? I don't see any. I would just echo those comments. I think staff has done the right thing throughout this process, up to and including today, and I certainly support the resolution. So I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so now we're moving on to 9.2, the proposed new sign bylaw, and the manager of building services and CBO has that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. I'm here to present the new draft sign bylaw for council's review. The current sign bylaw was adopted in 2015 and amended in 2017. The current bylaw is detailed, but it's difficult to navigate. The new bylaw is based on the Sign Association of Canada's suggested format. Town staff have attempted to import the current clauses into this new format. During the review, staff have updated wording and clauses that have caused difficulty during the implementation of the existing bylaw. The report outlines the notable changes in the new draft sign bylaw. Included with the report is the existing bylaw and the new draft bylaw. After tonight's discussion, staff will update the bylaw and the draft will be circulated to user groups for information before returning to council for adoption. I welcome any questions regarding the new draft bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution that council direct the proposed new sign bylaw to be brought back to a future meeting incorporating feedback provided by council. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Discussion. I'll start with the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Halpin. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all the effort that has gone into wording a new sign bylaw. A couple of comments and questions for clarification. I appreciate the effort to make it a little easier to read. It still was a bit confusing in terms of matching up information, but I think it's on its way. I just in the current sign bylaw, the idea that someone has to apply for a sign permit via an application is right up towards the front of the bylaw. It's actually item number 3. This bylaw, you have to get almost to the very end to realize that you actually have to apply for a permit. Before you get there, there's one place where it says about a building permit is required for a specific kind of size, a specific type of sign and size. But, I would just suggest maybe still putting the sign permit application comments a little bit more at the beginning of the bylaw. A couple of concerns I have are that freestanding signs, which is a new terminology in this bylaw, freestanding signs seem to have an incredible increase in the potential height that they can be. I believe they're kind of the equivalent to what was a ground sign in certain categories, in particular highway commercial in the current bylaw, but the height restriction in that bylaw was 2.5 meters. In this draft bylaw, the height for a freestanding sign, again, in the highway commercial zone, would enable a freestanding sign without any kind of variance application, a minimum 1.5 meters to a maximum of 6 meters. There's a big jump there between 2.5 meters to 6 meters in terms of the height. I'm very concerned that we would be enabling signs of about 30 feet tall, no, sorry, of about 18 feet tall along the highway without really thinking about if they really belong there. So I would respectfully, indicate some concerns about the height with freestanding signs. The other concern that I have that appears to be a change would be with ground signs. Now, ground signs are signs that are less than 1.5 meters in height. In the current bylaw, they don't seem to be possible in the commercial core zone or in most residential zones, in particular R1, R2, and R3. This new draft bylaw that we have before us would enable ground signs in both the commercial core and in R1, R2, and R3 zones where they haven't been allowed before. It's and the size of a ground sign is indicated as being a maximum of 3 square meters. Well, of course, 1.5 meters in height, that restriction does provide some limitation, but enabling a sign that's potentially 3 square meters in size, even though it's lower to the ground, that's a pretty big sign in a residential zone and also in the commercial core. Important, though, to note that the setbacks that are indicated in the residential zone talk about signs being installed 2 meters from the property line. So that would put the only place one of those signs could be well back on somebody's property. So I'm concerned about enabling ground signs on residential properties, period. But certainly, the setback thing, it's like, is that really what we mean? I just have a couple more that I'll mention. I have concerns about enabling 10 square meter signs within a subdivision without a permit being required. That's a 107 square foot sign within a subdivision. I'm not too sure exactly what those signs are all about, but it's in the draft bylaw. I'm concerned about that utility poles seem to have been omitted from the list where signs are not permitted. So, attaching a sign to a utility pole or even a municipal sign pole, like a stop sign, that is in the current bylaw. It's not apparent to me that it's in the draft bylaw. I think that's I wouldn't want to see that disappear. In fact, I'd go even further in the draft bylaw and make it so that when a sign is on a utility pole, that we're just enabling, commenting in the bylaw to enable town staff to remove these signs from the poles and just destroy them without notice. And if it's repeat offenders, that we deal with it in another way. I have some questions about billboards. They seem to be prohibited. We do have some existing billboards, so at some point it might be appropriate for council to receive an indication about how existing billboards are covered. There's not too many left, but certainly we're prohibiting billboards. And there are still a few in the community. There's also a comment in there about election signs are not covered by this bylaw, just for the benefit of anybody watching, or perhaps someone who might forget that election signs are covered by a different bylaw when election time comes up. And I do have some other questions about existing signs that I'll reserve till after some other members speak. My last comment, though, in terms of just something maybe to give some consideration to, is the notice that's mentioned towards the end of the bylaw for people who are in need of receiving an order or something like that. It says that they have to be contacted by regular mail or personal service. I understand, that those are important connection mechanisms, but we're living in a world where there's a lot of electronic communication. I just wonder, regular mail seems to be hit or miss for a lot of people now, who are using digital access to their communication feeds more often, or receiving information that way. So I just thought it might be appropriate to consider a different, or an addition to the notice part that enables a different kind of contact when we have that information on file via, say, a sign permit application or a property file via the tax thing. So those are, I don't really think I had questions in there. They were more about concerns for, consideration concerning heights and sizes and potential new additions to areas that haven't had signs, ground signs in residential zones and commercial core. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I might just ask if the CBO has any comments to any of that. Was a lot there, but any comments you might have?
Yeah, I do have a comment, so I'll try and hit them off. I kind of jotted it down as we went. I think the email service, I would say officially, I don't know if that's an official way of giving service. We can definitely contact them through email and try and push them along, but I'd have to check with legal to see if that's an official service method. They have certain methods that we can use. The billboards are grandfathered in, so anything that was placed before the bylaw are grandfathered in. The utility signs, they're considered poster signs and they're prohibited. We could clean up the wording if you wanted. We could add utility signs, but the intent of the bylaw is to not allow signs on utility poles. So we could definitely clean up the wording to make it clear that way. The freestanding signs that went up in height, we split them off from ground signs because we found they were the majority of the minor variances for highway commercial properties. The standard, I'm going to use it, the standard restaurants and franchises, they all have a standard size sign. So any of those signs that wanted to go on highway commercial automatically flagged a minor variance, because right now we only allow 8-foot signs. So if you can picture like a McDonald's or a Harvey sign, they're well over. So we checked to see what the surrounding municipalities' heights were allowed for those type of signs, and that was the 6 meters. So that's the logic behind that. We could definitely change it if it's council's will, but that's the understanding behind that. The ground signs for the residents, that one I am definitely open to removing. I think that was left on for residential occupations, but I think that is allowing a little more than we anticipated. So I definitely am open to remove ground signs from the residential properties.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
One follow-up on your comment about minor variance applications. Can you please, I don't believe we've had a lot of minor variance applications associated with sign stuff in the last 5, 6, 7 years, but I also don't think that it's the majority of the limited number of requests that have come in. Is that a fair statement, Josh?
I could get you the numbers. I'll have to pull them and I can get them to you. But I think it's when we looked at the trend that was definitely the one that popped out at us, because you're correct. There's only about 5 a year. So
sorry, with respect, I don't believe there's 5 per year. I think the last 2 years of the Committee of Adjustment, I think we've had 1, possibly 2, and it was more related to lighting and sign placement, not the height. But would appreciate if you gave us some information
Sure.
about previous minor variance applications associated with signs. And you can look back 5 years or 10 years, but I don't think the number is very big, but thank you.
Okay, so now I have Councillor Halpin, then Grace, then Stack, then the Vice Deputy Mayor. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Mike, one of my questions was also about the freestanding signs, and I think it's helpful to the public when, Josh, you gave an example, such as you did as a Harvey McDonald's or Food Basic sign, that you're accommodating something like that. So thank you. I had a question, 4.0, you can't paint a sign on your building. I was just curious about that. Why couldn't you paint a sign on your building? That's my first question.
Sure. CBO.
I would have to review that clause and get back to you. I would have to talk to our team and that must have been brought over from the last bylaw. I'd have to double check and get back to you on that one.
Sure. Okay. And I have another question about, again, using an example. What is a residential information sign?
Those would be the name of your house number. I know Diane asked at one point if it was, you could do the Airbnb sign if it complied to that size. So
Right. Well, I think that in the residential neighborhood, certainly in my residential neighborhood, there are several cottage parks and related businesses there. And I believe that those people have a right to have a sign to advertise their business. They historically have. And tourism is an important part of our town. So I think we do need to be able to allow signs, certainly for cottage parks and other related industries, and in that tourist part of town. So I would say that we need to have the ability for people to put those signs in the residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
well, okay, would that be a consideration? Because certainly I don't think it's our intention to say that cottage parks that have been here longer than some of us are alive, should still have a right to advertise and still have a right to have signs. And if someone opens a new cottage park, they should also have a right to have a sign on their cottage park. Thank you.
The CBO.
I would agree. I think we could look into see what try and find a balance between allowing houses to have ground signs and cottage parks. We could definitely look into seeing a clause that could help us get that.
Right. And just if I may, Mayor, just very quickly, I notice people like to put a nice little wooden sign on their house. I don't have one, but you could have one of those nice wooden engraved signs that say the Helpin' family or something like that. Surely it's not our intent to deny people, hanging a sign on their house.
Yes, to that, there is a section for residential sign that you can put mounted on your house. You're allowed that. So
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so now I'm on to Councillor Grace, then Stack, then the Vice Deputy Mayor. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Josh, for your work on this. A couple of things. I was glad to see that the annual realtor fee was removed because it was difficult to regulate and collect. To me, I think it's besides being unwieldy, I don't think it's particularly fair to target realtors for that. Regarding real estate signs, I have a question about the size in the new bylaw. Talks about a maximum area of 2.5 square meters, maximum sign height of 1.5 meters. So there are some real estate signs around that are quite a bit larger than that. So how are we going to handle those?
we definitely can direct them to the bylaw. If they want a variance, they can get a variance. If it's for a subdivision, that would fall under a construction sign. So we allow for a larger size in a subdivision, a new subdivision. So it would depend on the case by case, but I think that sign is going to be pretty generous for those real estate agents. Unless it's an advertisement sign, then it would fall under ground sign. So
Okay. Regarding prohibited signs, I know there were a couple of mentions of that already. I had a question about in the old bylaw, the existing bylaw, there's a prohibition of signs displaying profanity, nudity, hate messages, or other similarly offensive content. I don't expect we run into that too often. However, in the last couple of years, we have run into that with criticisms of the Prime Minister in particular, using profanity. And that's not, I couldn't find it in this draft bylaw. It's not in the prohibitions list. How would we handle that?
I can add it to my notes and I can add it to the prohibition list. It won't be hard to do. I don't think there'll be any pushback for adding that to the prohibition list.
Well, I mean, my preference would be for it to be added back in.
Yeah.
On the other prohibition question I have, on inflatable portable signs, does that include those dancing, waving inflatable figures?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I was glad to see the addition of the signs painted directly onto the exterior of the building. Just a comment. I agree with the deputy mayor about the freestanding signs and the height, because I know when I was on the Committee of Adjustment, the argument for business owners who were seeking a variance, I think you said that the average sign height was 8 feet. Is that right? Which is about 2.5 meters. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually the 6 meters is really closer to 20. It's almost 20 feet. It's 19.68 feet. And to me, that's just too high. And I can see what's going to happen is if we do that, then you're going to have a slew of of not even minor. You're just going to have a bunch of changes of suddenly, you're going to have new signs trying to get within that up to that 20 feet in height and the increase in size, because that was the argument of people coming forward. Well, my neighbor has it this high, so I should be able to have it that high. And personally, I know it's highway commercial. I don't think that that's an appropriate look to fit in with the character of our town. What else? Sorry, I've got, another question, one more question, and that's about illumination. There's a clause in there talking about the sign brightness and that it shall not exceed a certain measurement. Just a question, when we're approving building plans so that builders don't go to the trouble of buying an expensive illuminated sign only to find that it's going to violate this standard that we've included. What's the process there, or what do you anticipate the process would be for making sure that those illuminated signs would be compliant with this measurement?
Yes, this is the first that we've been dealing with this style of regulation, but I would anticipate that on the permit we would create a stamp that we put on there that says must comply with this illumination, and the manufacturer would have to send some specs that we could file on permit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I have Stack, then the Vice Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Mayette. Councillor Stack.
Thank you. So just a couple of comments. I'll send an email. So when I reviewed the bylaw, I think there's still just some drafting cleanup. I think there's still in my view a few too many defined terms. We refer to signs and canopies, and it's not clear to me why we repeatedly refer to canopies but not all other signs. So there's some minor drafting points. I don't think they merit more discussion. Josh, I'll send them through and you can take them or leave them. I did have just a question about permitted. So in section 5, the signs, or the sort of signs that don't require a permit. I was a little concerned on 5K. I just thought it was a bit too limiting. So, I mean, a couple of things. I'm not sure, and maybe it's somewhere else and I just missed it last night. So flags are emblems of patriotic, civic, educational purposes. I think we're missing things like, presumably, if someone wants to have a Maple Leafs flag or a, I don't know, a Senator's flag or some Go Sports flag, they don't require permission. So I think there's probably an opportunity to clarify. And I think this is probably running contrary to someone else's point earlier, but I'm a little hesitant to narrow the scope of flags in terms of permits, because I think civic, I'm not sure political and civic are the same thing. So I think rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure we should, for example, the F Trudeau's flags, I find them distasteful, but I'm not sure we should be restricting that. People have a right to express themselves, whether it's an agreeable form of expression or not. And if it's not, if it's not subject to the limitations that we put by law, I'm not sure we should be restricting them. So I was just a bit nervous by what I perceive to be, and perhaps I'm being overly cautious, but I just found that the implication is that if you want any other type of flag, you need approval. And I don't think that's the role of a municipal government to dictate the substance of a flag. And, I'm generally more focused on regulation, but I do think that when it comes to freedom of expression, I just don't think that that's an appropriate limitation. So that's my main concern with that section of the bylaw. And then otherwise, the only other comment I had that I think was, we make reference to, was it the sign oversight committee or something? The sign variance committee, which is just simply the committee of adjustment. So these are just some minor points. I just found that funny that there's probably some opportunity to further clarify, just to avoid the confusion. But my main concern, I just feel like I really have to repeat it, was just being careful as we review this. We're not attempting to govern the substance of people's expression, because and if we are going to, we better be as broad as possible within the confines of whatever we consider to be appropriate, but we just need to be mindful of that going forward. Thanks.
Okay, then we'll ask, we have the Vice Deputy Mayor next, and then Councillor Mayette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Josh. A great start to revamping the bylaw. Signs can always be controversial in terms of when applying and what's the right height and size and shape and location, and so it's something we have to have the bylaw, obviously, but you've done a great. I think it's a great start. Page 11, 5.0p. It's good to see that signs not requiring permits, the charitable not-for-profits, I see is in there. And I think that's a good thing. Anything we do to make it easier for not-for-profit organizations, all the better. So I appreciate seeing that. The page 14, the accessory signs, Josh, 7.0, I'll just flip down to that one here, page 14. It said no accessory signs shall be closer than 1.5 meters from a sidewalk or property line. Josh, does that include, like, those accessory signs would include downtown businesses?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it here.
Yeah, it's a page 14, signs requiring a permit, accessory signs, 7.0F. 7.0F.
I see. Yeah.
So those signs no closer than 1.5 meters from a sidewalk. Does that include downtown businesses?
I believe if it was an accessory sign, it would be.
Because I guess my question there, Josh, is, Port Algon, Southampton, you frequent those two locations downtown, and a fair number of times you see signs on the sidewalks that because the sign says not closer than 1.5 meters from a sidewalk. So I just wonder that might be difficult to police in our downtowns, because they are that, like, the sidewalks go right from curb to the storefront, right? So I just wonder if you just want to put some thought into that, maybe, Josh. You might be a little difficult to police that. because 1.5 meters from a sidewalk or a property line in the downtown will be difficult to achieve. Do you see where I'm
Yeah,
driving?
yeah, I'll certainly get back with the team for the sign and we'll review that clause and make sure we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
restricting too bad.
I just think it might be too restrictive in how do you police that particular clause. The illumination, if I slip down to page 21 here, I circled today. Yeah, and I think Councilor Grace mentioned it, but the lighting for illuminated signs should not provide any glare or shine. And Councilor Grace, I guess I couldn't find, maybe it's in that section, I didn't see it, but where we talked about the illumination and to what level. What page was that on? If someone could direct me to it. I just wonder if we're going to run into some problems with the glare or shine. What's the definition of that? You know, and the other question I had was, Josh, was do we have a fair number of legal non-conforming signs now that are illuminated in neighborhoods where they're shining in the front windows? Has there been an inventory taken of those signs at all?
We haven't taken an inventory of the illuminated signs that are currently out there. We have not, no.
But they'd be grandfathered, I suppose, like if they don't meet the glare or shine restrictions or code, they wouldn't be asked to take them down to be legal non-conforming, I guess, would it be?
I believe so, yeah. And we currently work on complaints, so I haven't had any complaints about glare or shine.
I just my question really is about the glare and shine is how do you what's the definition? How do you define that? And is that a matter of one person feels the glare is too much, another person says, well, the glare is not too much, so I just wonder if there should be a little more clarification in for that number F. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so if anybody who doesn't have another question who still has their hand up, you could take it down for me because we got a lot of hands up. And if you all have questions still, that's fine. But I have Councilor Mayette next. Yes. And then and we'll see what happens after that. Councilor Mayette.
Am I up?
Yep, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for the I think it's an excellent bylaw. Just overall, I think it's some good updates. My question is regarding in the agricultural zone, you've got that identified as Zone A, and it gives a number of signs that would be exempted, and then there's signs that would require a permit. I'm just trying to see where some of the signs that you might find in the rural agricultural areas. I'm thinking about like barn quilts, or some people like paint the barn doors like a big Canadian flag, or maybe paint their roof of the barn with some kind of symbolism for the airplanes flying by, that sort of thing. They're not specifically spelled out in here. Would they be exempted from the bylaw, that kind of thing?
Yes, I believe we don't regulate murals through the sign bylaw, so I would put that in the flavor of a mural, like art or a mural. We don't regulate that through the sign bylaw.
Okay, so whatever you want to do on your barn. And then there's also some of the farm or operations will have their business sign or even their family sign. I think Councillor Halpin pointed out you might have like, Mayette Family Farm, or you see these Century Farm signs. Those would be exempted as well, I suppose, right?
On the side of the barn, is it on the side of the barn?
Not on the side of the barn
Sorry.
necessarily. More likely at the end of the laneway.
Yeah, I would make sure that we can allow those.
Okay, and then just one quick more question is the signs that we have when you go through the drive-through at Tim Hortons, which I did earlier tonight. Those signs, are they grandfathered? All the signs on the fence there?
Yes, if they were put in legally before the bylaw is passed, then they will be grandfathered, yeah.
Because they do change from time to time. Like the person who owns that fence, whoever's charging for it, charges for space there, and as businesses come and businesses go, they do get changed. So the person who's doing that can continue to do that, but somebody else can't take up that practice on another fence somewhere else.
Yeah, I can review our interpretation, but as I believe the current ones are grandfathered in.
Yeah. Okay, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll get Councilor Davinsky next, and then we'll come back to folks who've already spoken. Oh, you're still on mute there, John.
There we go. Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.2 illumination. It indicates that sign brightness shall not exceed 0.3 foot candles, 3 lux. And this may be something that the Vice Deputy Mayor was asking about.
Oh, you're on mute there again, John.
Sorry. It also states above ambient light as measured using a foot candle lux meter. Can someone please explain to me what all that means?
I can attempt to. That's a standard unit of measurement for the brightness of light. So this is a standard clause that we've found. We didn't make this clause up. We definitely have borrowed it from a bylaw that knows a lot about signs. So it's a standard unit of measurement for the brightness, and that is and then the other is how they measure it. So.
Okay, thank you, Josh. And I just want to say thank you for this, the work you've done here. There's so many questions, so many answers still need to be focused and brought to fore. So let's hope we end up, I think we'll end up with a great sign bylaw down the road. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we'll come back to the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Grace.
Councillor Grace was ahead of me. Is that okay?
I'm just working my way back through as you guys spoke the last time.
Okay, well, just to follow up on a couple of things that other people have said too. The Vice Deputy Mayor mentioned about Section 7, which was accessory signs. I was a little bit confused. He picked up on the 1.5 meters from the sidewalk or the property line. There's a reference in this section 2 to a sign having to be 0.6 meters from the vehicular traveled portion of the road. I didn't know, like that, they seem to be in conflict with each other because sidewalk, property line, vehicular traveled portion of the road. I don't know. I would have thought that a sign had to be further away from the road than from the sidewalk. But that section, I think there's some distance information there that it doesn't make sense to me. So perhaps you might take a look at that. I also noticed in the Zone A, which Councillor Mayette referenced, that in 6.2, the indication was there that an incidental sign, that list included incidental sign. None of the other zones had incidental signs on their list. So I wondered if it was, I think incidental signs is picked up elsewhere with some other language, but it just was odd that the only place it made it onto a list with the zone specific information was Zone A. So I don't know if that was intentional or maybe it was just, something that it should be on them all or it shouldn't be on any of them. I wanted to ask though, with regard to grandfathering and existing signs, I think that there's some room for clarification beyond maybe what has been said or that sort of thing. You use the expression, if something was legally there, there's a lot of stuff that's been installed that is not technically legal. There were no applications or that sort of thing. So I guess I would appreciate more clarification either within the bylaw or to council members about when we adopt a new bylaw, what does it really mean in terms of what's existing at the time? Because my read of the language is that the grandfathering is only there if a sign was legally installed or in fact met in some ways bylaw requirements at the time, for the current bylaw, because there's a lot of signs that they were just installed. They don't match anything. So I think it's important that, we just get some clarification about what that means. I also think that, there's something in there, 3.3B, I think. It talks about when there's a change of business. I know in the past, we've been able to have some signage removed that the chance we got to do that was when there was a change of business. So, you know, the idea of grandfathering, I guess I would appreciate a little more complete sort of indication of what that means, because I don't want, you know, just there to be a sense that, you know, oh, if you got a sign up already, you know, when there's a new bylaw, it's all okay. It's not necessarily okay. There's also, in reference to the Tim Hortons comment from Councillor Mayette, this draft bylaw very specifically says third-party signs are not allowed. They're prohibited. Well, a third-party sign, my reading of the definition of that would be that it's for a sign for a business that's not actually present on that property. So those kinds of signs are third-party signs. So technically, unless there is some written agreement formalizing, you know, that wall of advertising at any of those places that have it, there shouldn't be any potential to add more or to change something, because we're saying that third-party signs are prohibited. So I guess I just would appreciate a little clarification. And I think that, you know, there is some kind of documentation, particularly associated with the Tim Hortons and perhaps even the car wash location on Goderich Street in Port Elgin as well. But I don't think we should just assume that everything's grandfathered because it exists. My last point here, hang on, I had one more circle on here. In the definitions part, just as maybe an addition, you, Josh, you got a definition, but the bylaw officer or any kind of enforcement officer didn't make it onto the definition list. There is one reference later on towards the end of the draft bylaw specific to a bylaw officer. Might be good to put some indication into the definitions list of what a bylaw officer is. You know, we all know what it is, but it does get referenced later on. And all the other players are like the town is on the definitions list, council is, chief building officer, you know, all that kind of stuff. The bylaw officer is missing. Another thing that I found confusing, and some of them are on the definitions list, some are not. Throughout the document, throughout the draft document, there's reference to one per. So one per premise, one per business, one per occupancy, one per building, one per street frontage, one per property. I think maybe there's a good place to carefully read through the document, and maybe there's some standardization there, maybe not, but there seems to be a real collection of, you know, one sign is allowed per this, and then you get a lot of different comments after that. And even with an owner, you know, an owner is defined as the owner of the property or their authorized agent. You know, there's, again, it's one per owner, one per whatever. I just think that there's room there to maybe clean up the bylaw with a little more standardization, and maybe instead of having like 6 or 7 different one per nouns there, you can maybe have only 2 or 3. I don't know if that would work, but I just found that an opportunity as well. But thank you very much, and I really look forward to seeing the next rendition. And I do respectfully repeat my concern, though, about signage in residential zones. I understand what Councillor Halpin is saying about existing cottage parks and that sort of thing. And I don't know, some of them may be zoned as recreational commercial properties, and that gets picked up in a different zone already. But certainly the areas that I'm most concerned about are what's currently known as R1, R2, and R3. You know, those areas are traditionally where, you know, there's single family or duplex, single family houses or duplexes, or, you know, a triplex. And granted, there's some additional housing going into those spaces via additional residential units, et cetera. But those places have traditionally not had signage beyond street signs and, you know, a number on a house or heritage plaque or a family residential information plaque on the building. I certainly appreciate the intent to provide some guidance as to what's okay and what's not okay there. But in my mind, none of those signs that are in existence right now in the residential zone that hit the ground sign mark, none of them should be grandfathered in because they're not technically legal right now. But I really look forward to seeing the next rendition so that some information is a little more clear perhaps. But thank you very much for your work on this, Joss. I know it's taken a long time to get here.
Okay, thank you. I got Councillor Grace and then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to return briefly to the question about the inclusion of prohibition of obscenities, etc. That clause, because in my mind, it's entirely possible to display a sign which criticizes a public political figure without using an obscenity. I don't think that's necessary. I know at that time, I received calls from several residents who were upset, not really for themselves, but for their young children. And there were several of these signs that were displayed in prominent places that they traveled by frequently. So I understand the concern about constriction of freedom of speech and freedom of thought, but I think that it's entirely possible to preserve those rights without using verbiage that violates our community standards. And I believe that's from what I've looked at, and I haven't done that would be up to Tammy to do some kind of review, in-depth review if administration decided that was necessary. But I think that that's one of the standards is this a violation of community standards? Thank you.
I think I may just make a quick comment while we're on that subject, because that was one of the ones that I wanted to circle back to too. And I also received a lot of feedback over the course of the pandemic about those particular signs or flags. But what it came down to is enforceability. And we did look at it at that time about whether we could, under that provision of the sign bylaw, which at that time and still does, I guess, prohibit whatever the language is, profanity and other and pornography and that kind of thing, and asked and said, could we enforce a prohibition on those things? And the answer was pretty decidedly no. And so I think, to me, it comes down, what I don't want to see in these bylaws, and this is maybe a more general comment about the whole bylaw, is us putting things in these bylaws that aren't enforceable, setting up expectations that we can do things that we can't. And that is an area in terms of whether we might find some language or some image upsetting or even abhorrent ourselves. Those standards are different from different people, and there isn't a clear authority that we have to stop somebody from displaying those things. Or if there were, I haven't seen it. I certainly didn't see it at that time when we were actively looking at it. So I guess what I would say is, if something like that is going to make its way back into this bylaw, I would like to see upfront from our legal counsel or from you, Josh, some demonstration through some case law or something that a municipality in the same position as ours could reasonably prohibit a profane sign, for example. Because I don't want to see it in the bylaw if we can't enforce it, because that's what happened then. People saw that we had it in a bylaw, said, enforce your bylaw, and we couldn't do it. And that just, that's kind of a violation of the trust that we have with the public here, because, we create these bylaws and we put them out there and we put them in the public and we say to the public, this is the law in our town. And then if it isn't enforceable, it's kind of, well, what good was any of that, right? So that would be my only request on that front, is let's put things in the bylaw that we can actually enforce. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Josh, thank you for making the bylaw simpler and clearer. And I think if we want to be, that should be one of our goals as a municipal government, is to keep things as simple as possible. And I believe this new bylaw is a lot clearer than the other one. And I'll just reiterate again, if I have a fourplex and I want to put a sign up, Bud's fourplex or Helping Family fourplex or something, you know, with your address on it and your phone number, you should certainly be able to do that. We're a pro, want to be business friendly, and again, we don't want to be sign police. Thank you very much.
You, the deputy mayor.
Since, thank you. Since you mentioned enforcement, what is the potential, and it may or may not be possible. One of the challenges with all of our bylaws, actually, but particularly the signs in some ways, is that it's complaint driven in terms of enforcement. What's the potential to have language put into the bylaw that signs on utility poles will be removed and destroyed automatically. And also, the proliferation of those stick in the ground signs that end up in the road allowances along the highway, particularly, the stretch of the Southampton Parkway from the beer store out to Sparks's Corner tends to get a proliferation every now and again because there's lots of nice open space there. What's the potential to have it be that there doesn't have to be a complaint, that in specific instances, and I would highlight utility poles and, the signs that are in the road allowance alongside, let's say, the provincial highways as a starting point, that town staff can just remove them and destroy them, that there doesn't have to be a complaint come in from the public. The reason being that, if we really think that it's important to protect that road allowance, and if we care about, the look and whatever of the community, that to me, and I'm not saying that, it's like, people have to stop what they're doing and do that. It's just, if somebody's out there and they see them, like, because they're cutting grass along the side of the road, they pick up those signs, don't stick them back in the ground, just pick them up, throw them in the truck, and they're gone. The way that it is now, they get picked up and then they get shoved back in the ground again because there's potentially been no complaint. So is there potential for that to be part of this?
The CBO.
I don't even know if it has to be in the bylaw. I know last year Madison was out. If those signs, those stick them in the ground signs, like you say, if we saw those, she would take them and put them in her car, and we would. I know she had 2 carloads full of those signs at one point. We would give them 30 days, and if they didn't come and pick them up, we would destroy them. So, I don't know if it has to be part of the bylaw. We can make an effort to do that. It's in the end, it's how busy you are in the summer, but we definitely try and get those signs up, the easy ones.
Okay. Are there further questions? I just have one other comment I wanted to make, and it was about those the height of the freestanding signs and the Committee of Adjustment decisions. I think we really do want to pay close attention to what the Committee of Adjustment has been saying on these signs before we set standards, because in my experience, and I would be interested to see what the actual statistics say, but in my experience, almost always, whenever we get a height adjustment request at the Committee of Adjustment, those height adjustments are approved. I can't think, that may have happened. I just can't recall an occasion where the Committee of Adjustment denied an increased height to one of those signs on the commercial corridor. And so if council is of the view that standard, that I heard the comments and certainly respect the comments about how we don't want to see the a 6 meter signs up and down the commercial corridors. So we set that standard at 2.5 meters, but our committee repeatedly allows it. So the municipality is a bit schizophrenic on the thing, right? We have a bylaw that council is saying this is the standard, and we have a committee that consistently forgives the standard. So I think we have to try to find a way to square that circle. Like we can't persist at this level, insisting on a policy and then allow our committee of adjustment to deviate from that standard all the time. I think seems to me what that tells us is that the community standard really isn't what we have been insisting it is, because community members on several consecutive committees of adjustment have decided over and over and over again to forgive that to allow for a taller sign. So I'm very eager to see the CBO's information on what on how many of those we've seen in the last several years and what the committee of adjustment decisions have looked like, because to me that should be really what guides this council in terms of what the community standard is and where we ought to be going with this policy. We shouldn't be trying to or we should be trying to fix that problem, because I think it is a discordant situation that we have internally. Anyway, good comments, and I think that gives the CBO lots to go back with and come to us later with a finalized version of this bylaw. And so there has been a resolution. It was moved and seconded, so I'll ask all in favor. Thank you very much. Thank you to CBO. All right, so there's the consent agenda there, and you guys know how that works. We can remove items for individual consideration. I've already heard folks wanting to speak about the energy conservation and demand one. That was Councillor Halpin. Others that folks would like to speak to, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine was just really about Shipley Avenue.
All right, so you want to speak about that one?
Just a quick question about it. It's not going to be long.
Okay. I think what I'm going to end up doing, because my guess is that most of these folks are going to want to say something about, so I'm just going to go through them because I think there's going to be comments. I know the communications people want to speak to those, so I think that's what we'll have to do, is go through them one by one. So we'll just start right at the top with sorry, let me just bring it up here. Here it is. Okay, so the Town of Saugeen Shores brand refresh. And the resolution is that council receive the Town of Saugeen Shores brand refresh report for information. Is there a mover and seconder on that? That's the Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grace. Discussion on this one? Councillor Stack.
Sorry, I just had a quick question on the tenor of it. So I think it's just aligned with some commentary I had before. It's just it seemed to me that there's a lot of sort of encouragement to bring people up here to move. So it wasn't clear if we're trying to solicit people to move up here permanently or as vacation residents. The same comment I made in the past, just being mindful about the challenges we have with the existing residents we have and making sure we can meet their needs effectively, particularly when it comes to housing. So I just echo concerns I've raised in the past about actively encouraging people to move up here when we are dealing with some pretty significant issues around housing, infrastructure, physicians, shortage of physicians. We just might be mindful. It's not clear to me whether this is a fait accompli and we're posting it and that's the new branding, or whether there's still opportunity to discuss. But just a concern I had, it seemed to be we're actively pursuing people coming up here, and we've repeatedly mentioned that those concerns continue to be an issue for the residents we have. Thanks.
We have a comment to it, the Manager Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, this is strictly around communications, so we don't have it. It can be applied to marketing, but we don't have plans to use it in that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jill.
Further comments on this one? I would just express, first, thanks for your work on this, Jill. I think this is always important work to work on refreshing the brand. I am concerned about the redo of the logo, of the corporate logo. To me, I don't have any difficulty if you need to change the Pantone colors, or if you need to alter the font or whatever within the existing paradigm. But this is what we have here is pretty well a completely new image. And I just don't see a need to create a brand new logo for the corporation at this time, particularly since the existing logo has been rolled out across the community it's on the water towers, it's everywhere, right? On all the signs everywhere. And then to make a change now, well, I understand that we won't roll it out all at once or try to spend $1 million to change all the logos everywhere. Well, it would be implemented incrementally, but that incremental implementation will take more than a decade. I mean, when will we paint the water towers next, right? And so that'll just sort of lead to brand confusion for a long time. I mean, it's only just recently that the old Saugeen Shores logo has fully disappeared off our trucks and whatnot, right? So I think I don't see a reason to change the corporation's logo this comprehensively. My preference would be that we didn't. That's only my view, but I guess I would say that I think if we are going to change it this comprehensively, if it's going to be a totally new image, then it should be done with council's endorsement. Like, I don't think it can be done at the staff level. I think council needs to endorse the new image before it's implemented. So I think that piece should come back to council for a motion to approve. And then you'll have council, you'll have council's endorsement or not, and we'll know which way we're going on it. But anyway, that's my view. I think that's how it should be handled. Councilor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I kind of feel like I really like everything I read in that report. I kind of felt a little bit the same way about the logo. Are we fixing something that isn't broken? You know, it is a nice logo, and I mean, sunsets are a big part of what we have here, and I think that's what's being illustrated with that logo, is the sunset or the waves in the lake, and you know, all the work you did reference the sunset and the beach and all that. So I feel with the logo that we're just fixing something that isn't broken. Thank you.
You, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did send a note to Jill today, and I just asked what the cost to do the work that was done to update, the look and feel of the logo, and it's within the $20,000 budget that Jill has on a yearly basis, to spend on these kinds of things. But I think it's got to come back to council too. I'm a little bit biased on this. When I was involved with the logo redo back in 2009-10, Brad Smith was involved, and I kind of like it. Their existing logo, and I agree, like all of our trucks have been changed now, the water tower and their letterhead, like it's all been changed. Well, it took 10, 15 years to make all those changes. And to redo it, I'm with you on this one. Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure we need to do it. I think our logo serves a good purpose. It's recognizable. I like the colors. If the Pantones need to change somewhat, I suppose we could do that, but I don't think it's broke. So I'm not seeing the need to have to do it. That would be my comment. I think it should come back. And the other thing I was looking for in the report when I saw the new logo design was, it would be kind of nice just to have beside it, what does our existing logo look like in comparison? Because I think again, I don't think it's broke. So
we don't need to debate this completely tonight, Jill. Will you bring back the logo to council in a report for direction, and line it up next to the existing one and give us the chair? We can discuss it at that time and give you some direction on it. Is that something that you can do?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is something. Can I take a couple minutes just to explain kind of why we made the tweaks
Yeah, of course you can.
at this time? And then I do appreciate you allowing us to come back. But I just want to say that this project, the majority of the focus was on building that brand narrative, because we've never really had a full brand since we've amalgamated. And we are the town of Saugeen Shores. So it is appropriate, in my opinion, that we build that brand. And that really was the focus. But as we were going through the work, because the mark, the logo does represent the community, we also decided it was also appropriate to, we call it, refresh the logo. And so we did a few things, because there were some issues with the logo when you apply it. So we refined the lettering in a way that the town's name is presented to improve readability and modernize its appearance. We introduced a cohesive color palette, as the mayor mentioned, which was missing before. and it ensures AODA standards for accessibility. And this allows everyone in our community, regardless of ability, to engage with our materials. We also simplified the imagery by focusing on key elements that best represent our identity. The seagulls remain as an important nod to our location and heritage, while the lake imagery was removed to create a cleaner and more versatile design. And these updates really do honor the legacy of the original logo, which we all agree we love. This is just making it more functional and current. So,
Yeah. All
thank
right,
you.
well, thanks for that. Oh, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I think, anyway, we're not going to debate this too much further tonight, no, but the sunsets I think are important. But the other thing with the report coming back, Mr. Mayor, I think it'd be good to see though, really over the next 10, 15 years, what is the cost? Because one thing that's missing in here is anytime you change out those logos on water towers and trucks and letterhead and all those other costs, there's a big cost involved. And I think we as a council need to have those numbers in terms of what it's going to cost to change those things out. I think that'd be important.
Just,
Sure, yeah.
yeah, just sorry, through you,
Manager.
Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment because it might be hard to give you all of those numbers. Our intent is to roll it out as we need to. So, if we never have to repaint the water towers again, then we won't. And I don't think it'll bring confusion because if you put them side to side, they are very similar. And having our old logo on a water tower isn't going to break our brand. So we really will do this methodically so it's not additional expenses. So if we need new business cards, we would apply it, et cetera.
Okay, well, we will have a discussion on the logo. It won't be implemented without council's approval, and so we'll get a report back and council will make a decision at a future date. But thank you for the report in general. Jill, it is a good report and we much appreciate it. So you've heard the motion. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That's carried. And then we'll go on to the Shipley Avenue area culvert study and the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to the engineering staff, one of the questions that the Port Elgin Saugeen Beaches Association have talked about pretty regularly was about Shipley Creek, and that's the intersection of County Road 25 and Shipley Avenue, and have asked engineering to talk about an engineering study, basically, to see if the flows, that creek can handle the flows without washing away any driveways, gas lines, et cetera, et cetera. So that's always been a concern of the Beaches Association. And I know the engineering staff have heard from Dave Reynolds and others in the past. And I just want to take a comment on that in terms of what work has been done with Shipley Creek. And Real, I see you're on. And I've talked to you about this several times, as have the Beachers. So Royal, is there any further engineering, any work to be done in terms of Shipley Creek to see if it can handle that the creek can handle the flows without washing away driveways, gas lines, et cetera, et cetera?
The Manager, Engineering Services.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we had a couple of meetings with the association. Our consultant was in that meeting. So the ask from the association is to complete an engineering study in the event when we will have any extreme weather situation. It's very hypothetical ask. Actually, what happened, all the catchment area, especially for the new subdivision catchment area, we had done the stormwater management study. If you review this report, actually the outlet 22, which is by the McNinnon Lane, and the storm system on BR Road 25, they are actually taking all the storm from new subdivision all the developed area. The outlet 23 is only taking water from the Shipley Avenue neighborhood. And it's not like a significant number of houses there. The geography or terrain is actually now have existing grade towards the lake. So the ask from association was to complete a flow study during this high extreme event. And our consultant actually repeatedly analyzed this situation and told the association that in case of the extreme weather situation, everything, including the road itself, will be underwater. So we cannot actually identify any definitive route during the extreme weather condition.
Okay.
So this, when we did the inspection, and if you remember that in our October, September, we had a couple of heavy rain events. And we did our inspection right after the heavy rain. And we actually found all the outlets, including outlet 23, which is at the corner of Shipley Avenue and is going through the driveway to the beach. Including that one, all the outlets is actually running at very low capacity. And we also identified two minor outlets in between, I think Schiffer intersection to McNinnon, and which were not identified in our MDP. That's also taking stormwater to the beach.
Okay.
So actually, we have enough outlets in that area to drain to the beach, to beach and to eventually to lakes. So we actually, from our engineers, we had this discussion a couple of times with them. They already had this kind of analysis, and they are very comfortable that even in the extreme weather situation, we have enough capacity within our existing assets or drainage infrastructure there. So what we did in these inspections, we actually had looked to all the existing culverts, outlets, all of the existing culverts actually is flowing with enough capacity. So like, as I said, that we had this inspection during fall, October, after a couple of big rain. It is still flowing. You can have a look on all the pictures. It's still flowing with low capacity.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. Can I make this request though? And I have a letter addressed to Mr. Reynolds today from the Beach Association, the president. The study does not address any of the issues the beaches have raised over the years. The basic question needing answering is whether Shipley Creek can handle the flows without washing away driveways and gas lines. Well, if I pass that on to you, the letter from Mr. Reynolds, all I'd ask, Mr. Mayor, is could you kindly just correspond with him then, and so I can get this off my file and turn it over to you, and maybe correspond with Mr. Reynolds directly. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor, to ask that of
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. You
Okay.
should pass that letter
Thanks,
on.
thanks,
to-
thanks. I'll direct this to you, Real.
Sure.
The second point I had about outlet number 23, 22, sorry, McKinnon Lane, is it 22 or 23? I'm sorry.
That's 22. That's 22.
Yeah, the outlet. Thank you for bringing up about the railing. I brought this up for 2 or 3 years in a row now, and it's just one thing I really do believe if anyone takes a walk down there in the summertime, that's a steep drop, and any child going down there with a bicycle can't get the brakes fail, or a young child doesn't realize the depth. That's a really steep fall rail, and the need for that guardrail I see you have as a low priority. But honestly, I'd like to see it moved up to a high priority because there's a high risk there. My belief is that, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So if I can leave that, Mr. Mayor, with staff again, real, I think if you could take another look at that, I think it'd be a good thing.
Any comment to that, manager?
Yeah, we can work with Public Works, and we'll see how we can make it our high priority, and we'll try to.
Well, that's my
Uh,
thought. I just, for
yeah.
safety. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Counselor Halpin?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I believe most of my questions are answered and by the deputy mayor's questions, but just like for Shipley Creek, whose responsibility are the culverts? Like people have driveways across Shipley Creek and they make culverts. Whose responsibility are those culverts? Are they our responsibility? Or are they the responsibility of the homeowner that installed them because it's their driveway?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and through you. It depends on the right of way, who owns the right of way. So when uh, there is two culverts on Shipley Creek, that's actually we own one and the other one on a private driveway. So having said that, since this is a natural water stream, the jurisdiction actually is SVCA. To need any improvement or to repair any culverts, we have to coordinate with SVCA. So we will be responsible if it is on our right of way, but we have to coordinate with SVCA.
Oh, you're still on mute there, bud.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. And if I, Raul and Mayor, if I could ask another question. I guess one of my concerns is when you look at Shipley Lane and the driveways there, you know, there'll be a 2-foot culvert and then going downstream, there'll be a 1-foot culvert, right? And then there are varying sizes and everything like that. And is that a concern? And I ask him the responsibility, and now I'm getting the answer that maybe it's Saugeen Valley Conservation's. Are they the ones that need to say to people, hey, your culvert is undersized, or, you know, that's my question.
Manager.
Thank you again, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we did our inspection and we found that any of the culverts is not less than 2 feet on the major stream or major ditches. There are some small culverts that actually within the neighborhood and on driveways. Okay, so that's our private. But on the main ditches or main outlets, there is no culverts less than 2 feet. And we found that we still have enough capacity with this diameter or sizes there.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Okay, are there any other questions on this one? I think I failed to read the resolution. The resolution is the council received the Shipley Avenue area culverts inspections report for information. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councilor Halpin, second by Councilor Grace. Anything else? If not, then all in favor. That is carried. Thank you, Rahul. So the next one then is Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan. And I think Councilor Grace and then Councilor Halpin. And then Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for, I guess this is Dan and Jim. Just one thing. This is something that I brought up when we had our meeting in December when this was previously presented. On page 8, there was a mention of energy recovery in the form of waste heat from ice plant compressors used for in-floor heating. And the thing that I asked about at the time, it says this is both in the arena and the police station. The report should be, I think, changed to say that it's the NII building or the old police station, not the new police station. That's on page 8, just before the sentence before section 2.3. That's it. Thank you.
Good note. Thank you. Councilor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'm not sure if I was reading this correctly last time. Is it correct to say that we're paying $230,000 for an energy audit for each ice for the Plex and $230,000 for an energy audit of the Coliseum.
Can I answer that, Mayor?
The Director of Corporate Services.
That is 230,000 is going towards making improvements.
Okay,
We
so
have
it is
30,000 that's a study, and then we have 200,000 that is actually on the improvement side a year later.
okay. Thank you very much. That's good. I'm really glad to hear that, and thank you for confirming that for me. The other thing I just wanted to say is that I noticed with the ice plant, they say, yeah, we're going to make improvements to this at the end of its lifetime use, which is a really good idea. I feel that we should be doing that for end of reasonable life for all things, including windows and doors. I mean, if we figure a window has a 40-year lifespan, let's say something like that, and it's 30 years old, replacing it to gain, even 10 or 15% more efficiency, well, that's, we've just cut 10 years of useful life out of it. And just to put that in perspective, moving a window from a double pane to a triple pane, if you think of your house, for instance, we're familiar with that. If you have a reasonably new house, your walls are an R20 and your double pane window is about an R2, an R2.6. And if you put in a triple, now, okay, it's an R3 or an R3.5. It's still a big hole in the wall. And I think it's a good idea to put more efficient windows in, but it's not a good idea to do that before the end of their useful life, in my opinion. So could we consider, having a good opinion that are we fixing something that isn't broken? Can we wait till we know we need new windows before we start replacing them?
The Director of Corporate Services.
I can speak to that as well. I mean, I think a good example is with the Plex and the renovations we're doing right now. During those renovations is when we're replacing the windows. We wouldn't be doing it at another time because it doesn't make sense.
If I may, Mayor?
Yeah.
And I realize too, the windows being replaced in the Plex, some of them were leaking and needed to be replaced. So I guess I totally understand that. And I realize that you're being, that was the right thing to do. I just want to make sure that we're not fixing things that aren't broken. We're not replacing them before the end of their useful lifetime. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Are there further questions from any members on this one? The resolution is the council approve the energy conservation and demand management plan. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by the deputy mayor. If there's nothing further, then all in favor? That's carried. Excuse me. Next then is 10.4, the Municipal Accountability Act 2024. Anybody have any comments on those comments that we will be submitting to the ministry? Councillor Grace.
Yes. Sorry. I got I do. Yeah, I think that, sorry, I'm just getting my notes on this. It's a very comprehensive report. Thank you, Dawn, for going through this. I don't see anything that I disagree with. I think it's important to, like, my understanding previously is the only way that a member of council could be removed would be if there was a violation of the pecuniary interest, conflict of interest act. And so I think that it's important to have a method of sanctioning individuals who, there've been couple of examples, one fairly recent, of just egregious comments made in the middle of a council meeting to another member of council. Whether the council, whatever the council decides, I think it's important to have that option. I also agreed with the comment about the fact that council should be given more leeway, that removal from seat in some cases is that all or nothing is too severe. So I think it's good to allow council to have that option of deciding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. And just for the public, the issue that Councillor Grace was mentioning was not this council.
All right. Are there further questions or comments? Councillor Stack.
Thanks. Just along similar veins, my other comments, some of our regulations today, just I think it's a good step forward. I think particularly in our community, we've had folks challenging the code of conduct and challenging sort of that's great. But obviously I don't expect us to ever be in this situation, but I think it's always worth reminding folks that everyone has been elected. And so in many cases, some of there is conduct that's abhorrent, conduct that the conduct before election is the same as the conduct during the election. So I'd be just really reticent to remove, like we should be very careful, should we ever find ourselves in that situation, that we apply that right very conservatively, just recognizing that these are elected officials and there is a in some instances people vote for people based on the behaviors that they express. We just need to be mindful of that. But otherwise, I think it's a good step forward, and I think it'll do a lot to further encourage trust in the rules we do.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments from members? I think that I think it's by and large, this piece of legislation from the province is good legislation. It creates an outlet in case there is examples or in scenarios where there's very egregious behavior by an elected official, but it also appropriately sets a very high bar for removal from office, because I think, as Councillor Stack rightly points out, there should be a very high bar for removing an elected official from office. So it creates that as an opportunity, but makes it difficult to, somebody has to have done something, I think, very abhorrent to arrive at that place. So anyway, I think it's by and large good, and I really appreciate the comments. Thank you to the clerk for putting these comments together from us. I think they're good comments, and if they were all adopted, it would make the legislation better. So the resolution is that council endorse the comments in this report and forward them to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for inclusion in the consultation. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, excuse me, seconded by Councillor Davinsky. All in favor? That's carried. All right, so now we are on to communications. And several items of communication there. I'm open to suggestions. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I would like for consideration being given to endorse the town of Almer's communication there that relates to bike lanes. I think that we have a pretty robust cycling strategy in our own community, and pretty confident that between Kristen and Lisa, they know what they're doing, and others in that department. And so I think it's appropriate that we respond to the province and say, hey, we can handle this in our own community.
Okay, so the Deputy Mayor moves support for the motion from the town of Almer regarding opposition to provincial legislation on cycling lanes and support for municipal authority and transportation planning. It's seconded by Councillor Halpin. Any further discussion on the resolution? Councillor Halpin?
As through you, Mayor, as the motion said, it is government overreach. That is really just an overreach into our business. So yes, I really support that. Thank you.
You further comments? I think my own view is that the province has every right to regulate bike lanes on provincial highways and on on roads that are owned by the province. But where the roads are owned by a municipality or some other entity, I'm not sure. I should think that the municipality would have the ability to regulate and decide how those roads should be designed. So in my view, yeah, I think that should be a separation there and a right of a municipality to install a bike lane on a municipal road if it wants to. So with that, I'll ask all in favor. Opposed? That's carried. Okay, others? I would like to suggest that we support the resolution from the municipality of Kincardine regarding property tax implications related to, it's related to nuclear, what is it? Property tax implications related to non-market valuation of electricity industry properties. I know this is, in this case, relating directly to the municipality of Kincardine, but it's important to remember that the same issues that are affecting Kincardine in this resolution affect the county of Bruce, and Saugeen Shores taxpayers pay county of Bruce taxes. So this issue is impacting taxpayers here in the town of Saugeen Shores. So I would ask if there's anybody here who would move that we support that resolution from the municipality of Kincardine, moved by Councillor Mayette, seconded by Councillor Davinsky. Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Other items, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I wrote it down here, but the letter from Wes Gray involving the Durham Dam and with Saugeen Valley Conservation and everything. You know, I think that we need to try to support Wes Gray, but I think Saugeen Valley Conservation did the right thing. And what I try to do when I'm making decisions on things is have a way I make a decision. And if you get engineers consistently saying that you're using this dam beyond its capacity, and using this dam beyond its capacity could run a risk of overtopping the dam and eroding the sides and leading to a dam failure, I think we need to listen to that. So I think Saugeen Valley did the right thing. But I would like to see us try to support our friends in West Gray. And I think that we need to start asking the government for some money for these legacy dams that communities have. You know, they've had these dams. Some of these dams are like 100 years old, and we just need infrastructure money. And for a town like West Gray and the amount of dams that it has going through it, they need help. That's more than what they can bear. So I wonder if there's you know, if there's any will to try to support West Gray by asking for infrastructure money for fixing these legacy dams.
Yeah, well, further comments on that, Councillor Mayette?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was thinking about commenting on this anyway. It's a complicated situation, and unless you've sat through the conversations that the board at the Saugeen Valley has gone through on this, they made some difficult decisions, and even in conversation with Mayor Kevin Eccles this past week at the Roma conference, of course he was in the position to rightly say "I told you so," because the negative effects that it's had on his town based on the decision that we took, which was, as Councillor Halpin points out, which was the decision that was recommended by professional engineers. It's had a negative impact on his town and cost some significant amount of money to forego a flood. So it's a kind of a complicated situation, and if you're not familiar with it, it's hard to grasp. It's hard for me to grasp exactly all the implications of what the right or the wrong thing to do is in this situation. But I do feel for the people of Durham. They have to be sitting there with potential floodwaters because of the extreme cold. If we didn't have this extreme cold snap, it probably wouldn't be an issue. But this frazzle ice business down below the dam is difficult. They've had 6 or 7 high hose in there trying to clear the ice out. And like I say, I feel for Mayor Eccles, and I feel for the people of Durham and West Gray, but I'm not sure really what we can do about it, but certainly the board at Saugeen and Councillor Halpin and I'll be there next month, and this will be a topic of conversation, I'm sure, and we need to find a path forward. But I agree that this is a provincial issue as well, that the province needs to step up. Maybe some of these dams need to be removed, like we did with the Truax Dam in Walkerton, and let the river run its course like it did 150 years ago. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that issue. Thanks.
I think my comment would be that this is one probably that's best left between the Conservation Authority and West Gray to work on for the time being. And if there's a solution that comes out of those discussions that we can be supportive of in some way, then I'm sure our council would consider doing that. But I think there's a lot of layers to that discussion, and I think it might be early and potentially ill-advised of us to wade into it just at this moment, but certainly keep us advised. And if there's a solution in the offing that we can support, by all means, bring it to us. Other items that on here that folks wish to speak to? Councillor Stack?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted, I don't know that we need to necessarily support the declaration for Toronto as I think it's a paid plasma free zone. I just didn't wanted to this concept of the consequence, like other areas where there's a payment for some sort of medical service, it hits vulnerable people. So I'm not asking that we support it, but I just think it was worth drawing attention to, because that I could foresee that coming, particularly to Owen Sound or the area, as we continue to see ongoing challenges with unstable housing, addiction, lack of affordability, that these types of services hit the most vulnerable. So we should just be mindful, should they rear their heads in this area, that there are real consequences for more vulnerable people in society. And it's also one more challenge on the healthcare system that I think we don't need right now. So I just wanted to flag that for interest.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Are there other comments on any of these items of communication? If not, I'll take a resolution that all of those items of communication be received for information. Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so that takes us off to the items that were on the consent agenda and on to motions and notices of motions. And we do have a motion here. As you recall, Council requested this motion as part of our budget process. And so here it is for our consideration, and I'll read it. Whereas at the November 27, 2024 regular council meeting, council passed resolution 292-20-2024. The council directs staff to develop a motion for council to consider a request to Bruce County to coordinate source separated organics. And whereas the town of Saugeen Shores has included a source separated organics feasibility study in the 2025 business plan to inform the environmental assessment study for the landfill optimization by examining ways to increase diversion. And whereas the transition date of the Blue Box recycling program to Circular Materials Ontario responsibility is January 1, 2026, and this affects all lower tier municipalities in Bruce County. And whereas Bruce County has historically had a role in waste management long-term planning and coordination, including but not limited to hosting the Waste Management Subcommittee and preparing the county's long-term waste management plan, currently in draft form, which addresses both the Blue Box transition and source separated organics. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Saugeen Shores formally requests that Bruce County Transportation and Environmental Services Department coordinate Blue Box transition planning and source separated organics issues with the lower tier municipalities via the Waste Management Subcommittee. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Questions, comments, discussion? The Deputy Mayor. Oh, you're on mute there still, Diane. Okay, you're on mute there, Diane.
There you go. Turn it on. Assuming that this gets passed, do we need to put language in there that we will share this resolution with other Bruce County municipalities to have them follow through as well? Does that need to be embedded into the wording, or can that just be understood?
It would be a good idea. I think you're right to just add a clause at the end there that this resolution be circulated to all of the municipalities of Bruce County. So we'll add that as an amendment if there's isn't objection from the mover and seconder. Any further discussion? I don't see any, so all in favor? And opposed, if any? That's carried. All right. So then we will go on to, close to public. Okay. I'm gonna scroll up here. So we're recommending to go into a closed to public session to discuss a plan or instruction to be applied to negotiations relative to a confidential amending agreement with Dr. Khan that is a personal matter about an identifiable individual, to provide instructions or to be applied to negotiations on behalf of the municipality regarding a SETI partnership update and discussions on matters relative to litigation and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege on confidential matters. So the resolution is that council move into a closed to public session in accordance with Municipal Act 2001, Section 2392. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee. E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Is the mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Stack, second by Councillor Grace. All in favor? Council will now move into a closed public session, and we'll see you on the other Zoom link.
Mr. Mayor, we have a 10-minute break, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll convene in closed session at 8:30. Okay.
Sir, you're ready to begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So I have a resolution that council arise from the close to public session and resume the regular council meeting. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Grace. All in favor? That is carried. And so I will now report from closed. That during the closed public session, council approved the closed to public minutes, discussed a plan or instruction to be applied to negotiations relative to a confidential matter, amending agreement. It's an amending agreement with Dr. Khan that is a personal matter about an identifiable individual, provided instructions to be applied to negotiations on behalf of the municipality regarding a community economic development initiative partnership update, and discuss matters relative to litigation and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege on a confidential matter. There is a resolution coming out of the closed session, and that resolution is that council adopt bylaw 12-2025, a bylaw to authorize a confidential amending agreement with Dr. Sanjay Khan. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Duhaime, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, so that concludes our reporting from closed. I believe I just passed the bylaw, so I don't need to wait until bylaws to pass the bylaw because I can pass the bylaw. So all I need to do now is go to the confirmatory bylaw. So there is a resolution that bylaw 11-2025, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read first. Is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 27th day of January 2025. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councilor Davinsky, seconded by Councilor Stack. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, there's resolution this regular council meeting of January 27th, 2025, hereby adjourns at 9:13 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councilor Stack, seconded by Councilor Grace. All in favor? Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.
Hasta la vista, amigos.
Hasta luego.